Hey there, and welcome. Have you ever really stopped to think about what your insurance policy is? I mean, beyond all that paperwork, it's actually a super powerful legal document, one that's built on promises and some really old principles. Today, we're going to decode that document and show you the real foundation of all your financial protection. So let's jump right in.
Okay, let's start with a question. What on earth could your everyday car insurance policy have in common with, say, a massive corporate merger worth millions? I know, they seem like they're from completely different planets, right? Well, it turns out they're actually built on the exact same legal DNA. And that DNA, the answer to the question, is the contract. At its absolute core, a contract is just a meeting of the minds. It's a set of promises between two parties that the law will actually enforce. This is the engine that drives everything in the world of insurance, from covering a little fender bender all the way to insuring a giant skyscraper. It's the formal agreement that turns your premium payment into a solid promise of protection.
So, to really get how this engine works, we need to look at its core components. The best way to think about it is that every single valid contract is like a structure built from four essential building blocks. And here's the kicker. If even one of those blocks is missing, the whole thing can just come tumbling down. So what are they? Here you go. First, offer and acceptance. Second, consideration. Third, legal capacity. And fourth, legal purpose. Let's break down this recipe for a binding promise, one ingredient at a time. First up, we've got offer and acceptance. This is basically the handshake part of the deal. In insurance, you're the one making the offer when you fill out that application. The insurance company takes it, they review it, and if they like what they see, they accept your offer by issuing the policy. But, and this is important, if they come back and say, okay, but your premium will be higher, that's not an acceptance, that's a counteroffer, and now the ball's in your court to accept it.
Next on the list is consideration. This is what makes the whole thing a two-way street. It's the exchange of value. Your side of the bargain is simple. It's the premium you pay every month or year. And what do you get in return? The insurer's side of the bargain, their legally binding promise to have your back if something goes wrong. To put it really simply, it's your money for their promise.
And finally, we have the last two ingredients, which kind of go together, legal capacity and legal purpose. Legal capacity just means that everyone involved has to be legally able to make a deal. Generally, this means being of legal age and of sound mind. It's why a policy sold to a minor is often voidable. They can back out of it. And legal purpose? Well, that one's pretty straightforward. The whole point of the contract has to be for something lawful. You can't, for example, get a valid insurance policy to protect a shipment of illegal goods, because the whole purpose is illegal from the get-go.
Okay, so what happens when one of those essential building blocks is missing or flawed? Well, that's when you start to see cracks in the foundation. It creates these weird situations where a contract isn't quite what it seems. Let's dig into how that actually plays out.
This brings us to a really important distinction, the difference between a void contract and a voidable contract. A void contract was never legal in the first place. It was dead on arrival. Think about trying to buy fire insurance for a building that is already burned down. It's impossible. A voidable contract, on the other hand, actually starts out as a valid agreement, but it has a built-in escape hatch for one of the parties. That policy sold to a minor we mentioned? That's a perfect example. The minor has the right to cancel it, which makes the contract valid right up until the moment it isn't.
And then, believe it or not, there's a third category, the unenforceable contract. This is a tricky one. It's a totally valid agreement, but a court simply won't enforce it because of some kind of technicality. For instance, your car insurance policy could be perfectly valid, but if you wait, say, 18 months to file a claim when your policy says the deadline is 90 days, a court isn't going to force the insurer to pay up. The contract itself is sound, but your right to enforce that part of it has expired.
So now that we have the general rules of contracts down, let's get to the really fun part. Let's look at the special, unique characteristics that set insurance contracts apart from pretty much every other type of agreement out there. This is where the game really changes.
The absolute cornerstone, the heart of it all, is the principle of utmost good faith. This is huge. Unlike buying a used car where the rule is kind of buyer beware, insurance demands total transparency from both sides. You have a duty to disclose all the important material facts, that's anything that could influence the insurer's decision, even if they don't specifically ask you about it. And in return, the insurer has to be completely fair and clear with you.
Have you ever tried to haggle over the wording in your insurance policy? Yeah, it doesn't work. And that's because insurance policies are what's called a contract of adhesion.
The insured drafts the entire thing, and you're basically presented with it on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. Now, because of that power imbalance, courts have a special rule. If any part of the contract is confusing or ambiguous, they will almost always interpret it in your favor, not the company's.
And that brings us to another really unique feature. Insurance is an aleatory contract, which is just a fancy way of saying the exchange of value is unequal and totally depends on a chance event. Just think about it. You might pay a 500 Rand premium, have one unlucky accident, and get a payout for R1,000,000. Or you could pay those premiums for 30 years straight and never claim a single cent. The outcome is uncertain, and the amounts of money exchanged are almost never equal.
All right, for our final section, let's talk about what happens when you actually need to make a claim. There are 3 core principles, 3 golden rules really, that make sure the whole system works fairly and stops people from abusing it. These are the rules of the payout.
The first and maybe the most important rule of all is the principle of indemnity. The goal here is to restore you to the exact financial position you were in right before the loss happened, no better and no worse. So if your 2-year-old phone that's valued at 8,000 Rand gets stolen, you get 8,000 Rand. You don't get the 15,000 it would cost to buy the brand new model. It's so important to remember this. Insurance is for compensation. It is never for profit.
Next up is the doctrine of subrogation. This one sounds complicated, but it's not. Let's say someone runs a red light and smashes into your car. Your insurer pays to get it fixed. Subrogation gives your insurer the legal right to step into your shoes and go after the at-fault driver to get that money back. This is smart for 2 reasons. It stops you from getting paid twice, once from your insurer and again from the other driver, and it makes sure the person who actually caused the damage is held responsible.
So, what happens if you have 2 different insurance policies covering the same property? That's where the principle of contribution kicks in. Imagine a factory has a massive fire that causes 3 million Rand in damage. Now, let's say it's insured for 5 million with insurer P and for 10 million with insurer Q. You can't just claim the full 3 million from both companies. That would be profiting. Instead, they share the loss proportionally. Since insurer Q provided 2/3 of the total coverage, they paid 2/3 of the loss. That's 2 million Rand. It makes sure you're made whole, but never ever overpaid.
So there you have it. Your insurance policy is so much more than just a stack of paper with a bunch of fine print. It's a really carefully constructed legal contract built on centuries of principles of promises, of good faith, and of fairness. It's a living document that defines one of the most important financial relationships you'll have. So the question I want to leave you with is this. After seeing everything that goes into it, will you look at your own policy in a completely new light?